Hi, everybody. I'm Rick Sterling, and I just wanted to be the guy to introduce all these wonderful presenters today. Um, First of all, for those of you that don't know, this particular session is being brought to you by the combination and combined effort of the Western Canada ARMA chapters for RIM month. And we've had 3 presentations up till now. This will be our 4th. And I just want to tell everybody how much I appreciate the time that's spent to get ready for these kind of presentations and to bring them to the rest of the crowd. Thank you very much, and all being members of ARMA. And if you aren't a member of ARMA now, contact your local chapter and start that process running. I'm just going to do a quick introduction. I'm looking forward to this presentation so much myself. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. Just want to let you know who's presenting today. Lisa Pokert is the Policy Manager and Corporate Records Officer with the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia, a publicly accountable statutory corporation responsible for operating the land title and survey systems of British Columbia. Lisa has been with the LTSA in various roles for over 12 years. She is currently a member of the Policy and Legal Services Division's senior leadership team, and as part of this role is responsible for LTSA's records and knowledge management. Lisa holds a Master of Public Administration from the University of Victoria. Lisa Ju is a knowledge and records management specialist with the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia. She reports directly to the Policy Manager and Corporate Records Officer to support the implementation of the records and knowledge management at LTSA. She's also a member of ARMA, of wonderful news, Vancouver Island chapter, which I might add that I chartered that chapter when I was region manager for Canada for ARMA. So I can well remember the first meeting we ever had of the island chapter in those days. Alicia holds both a Master of Library and Information Studies and Master of Archival Studies from the iSchool School of Information at University of BC. And Nicole Yanko is a policy and program analyst with the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia. Nicole has 20 years of experience in land administration, joining the LTSA in October 2009. And as a member of the policy and legal team, reporting to the Director of Land Titles, Nicole is responsible for the operation of the knowledge management program and deals with policy issues relating to the Office of the Director of Land Titles. What a wonderful group of people to do the presentation today. Thank you very much for spending your time and coming to do this today. Over to you, Alicia.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Rick. Thank you so much. I didn't know how I was going to introduce us, but here we are. Hello and welcome to our session. Our session is a case study about implementing a knowledge management strategy and knowledge management program at the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia, also known as LTSA for short. My name is Lisa Ju, and joining me are my fellow team members or partners in crime, Lisa Pokert and Nicole Yanko. And with that, I will go to the overview. So first, we will provide some context as what we do at the LTSA. And this is, I think, really important for understanding the knowledge that we have in order to operate the land title and survey systems of BC, as well as to support our customers. Next, we'll spend a bit of time into what is knowledge and knowledge management and how this differs a bit from records management. Then we will kind of go into our stories as who we are as that knowledge management team. So how did we get here? And I really hope that the message that this stories convey is that anyone can do knowledge management. It doesn't need a specific degree or background, just a team of the willing. And finally, the meat of the session, it's going to be an overview of our vision and our strategy. And this is the framework that basically informs everything that the knowledge management team does. This journey will provide us some examples, some of our challenges, our celebrations, and lessons learned in how we implemented that strategy through the development of a knowledge base, as well as operationalizing a knowledge management program. Lastly, of course, you have to go into what's next for the KM team. So a brief discussion of what's next. And I think I was kind of poking Rick there in the beginning. Knowledge management is an ongoing program. This is not a project. So, and we'll also, don't worry, save questions till the end. We have some time for that. And with further ado, I will pass it over to Lisa.
Thanks, Alicia. And thank you, Rick, for the introduction. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of what the Land Title and Survey Authority is, what we do, and why it's important. So as Rick mentioned, the Land Title and Survey Authority is a publicly accountable statutory corporation. We were formed in 2005 under the Land Title and Survey Authority Act, and we're responsible for operating the land title and survey systems in British Columbia. So prior to 2005, land title and survey systems were operated within the provincial government, and the Land Title and Survey Authority has an operating agreement with the provincial government, and we're governed by a board of directors with input from a stakeholder advisory committee. The Land Title and Survey Authority also has a wholly owned subsidiary, Landshare Systems, which is largely responsible for our technology, business innovation and development. So what is it that we do? So as I mentioned before, we're responsible for land title and survey systems, and those provide the foundation for all real property business and ownership in the province. So we deliver secure land titles through timely and efficient registration of land title interests and survey records. And so you might be thinking, what does that mean? So I'll give you a really simple example of one of the many things we do. So let's say you're buying a house. So before you buy the house, your lawyer or notary is going to get documents related to that property, probably in collaboration with your real estate agent. So for example, they'll pull a title search to see who owns the property, if there's any charges on the property, such as a lien or a mortgage, and they'll make sure that the property is good to go. So you'll get these documents, and once you've established that it looks good, you will, or your lawyer will file a transfer, which will transfer your ownership or the previous owner's title or previous owner's ownership of that property to you. And that will be filed in the land registry or land title registry. And that is why that's so important, is because that document shows your proof of ownership. So pretty important. And so I think that's all I was going to talk about here. Alicia, I'm going to hand it over to you to talk about knowledge management.
Awesome. So thanks so much for giving us that organizational context. And I think I'm taking some assumptions here that many in attendance are probably more familiar with the definitions of records and records management, but might not be as familiar with knowledge or knowledge management. So ARMA International defines knowledge management as the strategies and processes designed to identify, capture, structure, value, leverage, and share in an organization's intellectual assets in order to enhance its performance and competitiveness. There are many definitions of knowledge management out there, but I think ARMA International's does a good job of articulating the two critical activities of knowledge management, which really distinguishes its function from records management, such as, one, the need to capture and document this individual explicit and tacit knowledge. And the second part of that is, how do you share that knowledge with the organization? In knowledge management, knowledge is the asset to be strategically managed. However, what is knowledge? Knowledge can be sometimes defined as this know-how. It's a skill. It's experience. It's understanding. So of how to do something. But then there's this conceptual breakdown of what is knowledge. Is it's explicit or tacit? Explicit knowledge is being the knowledge that can be expressed. It can be captured. It can be codified and recorded to be shared. However, tacit knowledge is the knowledge which is non-codified. It's not easily expressed. It's something acquired from the experience. And while knowledge management, so while records management is good at the management of knowledge once it's captured and documented, knowledge management is essentially looking at how do we effectively capture and encourage the capture of tacit knowledge and make it shareable. In this sense, I feel knowledge management is much broader than records management, as it encompasses this realm of knowledge extraction and transfer. And often, This might involve reusing or repurposing information that might be contained in a record. So records management is focused on the management of recorded information, information captured. Recorded information or records are created through the business activities and transactions and serving as evidence of such activities or transactions. Often organizations really focus on records because it has to be managed and retained because of a legal obligation defined in legislation, which the Land Title and Survey Authority very much is obligated to do so under various pieces of legislation, such as the Land Title Act, Land Act, Landowner Transparency Act. There's a whole list. These acts basically inform the documents or the instruments, the forms, the applications that we use in order to capture the information about property ownership that must be submitted, maintained, and registered with the LTSA. With records management, you do not intentionally create records. It's a natural part of the business. Traditionally, records management does not deal with the contents of what a record is about or should be about. For example, determining if what is written or captured inside the record is actually of good quality or factual. Records professionals, the records managers, the analysts, the archivists, we're managing the object, the record, and not policing what's inside of it. If the organization tells you that the napkin with a phone number is a vital record, then a vital record it shall be, and you shall preserve and protect it. Knowledge management, on the other hand, is very focused on this intent to capture, document, or extract something that is useful to transfer knowledge. It's very much focused on the contents within that document or record, whether the writing is of good quality, if the information is useful, is it current, is it still valid? So in a way, knowledge management kind of informs the standard of documentation. And with that, I hope that leaves some food for thought. And as then we'll dive over to meet on to the KM team. Over to you, Lisa.
Thanks, Alicia. So you will all see why Alicia is our specialist. She knows a lot about records and knowledge management. So the three amigos, that's us, the knowledge management team. We refer to ourselves as the KM team, and we pretty much sign off everything with hashtag KMFam. So I'll start the journey off. So I've been, as I mentioned, with the Land Title and Survey Authority for about 12, 13 years. So in 2010, the organization created a knowledge base in SharePoint for land title content. So land title is one area of our operations, one of the biggest areas. And so we created this knowledge base to put content in for staff who are examining applications such as that transfer document that we talked about earlier. So they rely on this information to do their day-to-day work. So there's practice material, guides, that type of thing. So it was created in 2010 because we had a lot of people retiring and that knowledge was going out the door. So it was a way for us to have a central place to capture information. Essentially, it was a simple document library where PDFs were put in and left there. So fast forward to 2016, and we now had a problem. So all of the content that was put in there in 2010 was still there. Lots of it was outdated. Some of it was no longer accurate. So legislation changes, practice changes, all of that. And this created risk because now staff would be potentially relying on information that was outdated to make those very important decisions. So I was tasked with solving this problem. And so this isn't in my wheelhouse. I'm sort of the jack of all trades. I guess having been at the Land Title and Survey Authority for this long, I kind of get put onto various projects, IT projects, everything else that really don't have a lot of experience in, but yeah, so this was one of those times. And I didn't know it at the time, but what I was actually doing was knowledge management. So in investigating a solution to this problem, I started investigating what I was doing, found out it was knowledge management, worked with a consultant, and so for the first couple of years, it was kind of me as the Lone Ranger and a consultant. And what we determined was we needed to create a new knowledge base, and on top of that, this project scope creeped into include a knowledge management strategy for the entire organization. So this was a big task. And so the initial ask was to clean up this content and develop a solution so that this problem doesn't happen again. And that is what knowledge management is. So as the project grew, I needed more support. And so we hired Alicia because we also needed support with records. So she kind of wears two hats with knowledge management and records management. So enter Alicia, and she was great to help us develop this strategy and implement a solution for this new knowledge base. And then Nicole joined the project team. So she was brought on to help with a specific area of cleaning up rot. So rot is redundant, obsolete, and trivial information. So a lot of that initial content in there was rot. So Nicole was brought on to help with that, resolve that problem. And then we just never let her leave. And now she's really leading the program. So I'm going to hand it over, because I don't want to spoil it all. I'm going to hand it over to Alicia to tell her story.
So thanks, Lisa. As Lisa mentioned, I was the resource that was initially hired to start this knowledge management program and help revitalize that existing knowledge base. I think what I don't bring to the table is I don't have that knowledge of the business. I don't have that 10 plus years of, I'm really new, completely new. I've only been here for what I think now, just under 3 years, I think. And I think it was mostly like my background is what attracted. So I know here I'm going on about like the educational background doesn't matter, but you do have some, I guess a leg up if you have this master's of archival studies and library and information studies, because these are programs that give you that foundational background in managing information assets. So I can bring some knowledge about how to develop taxonomies, metadata standards, information lifecycle management, you name it. And knowledge, at least the tangible side of knowledge, is but another information asset or object I can help manage. I also had prior experience working as an academic librarian before I came here, and that was usually with providing reference services virtually, in person, by phone, and also teaching how to use search engines or databases to search and retrieve information. This is pretty important because we do have a group of users that need to learn how to search and retrieve information. And it also brought that experience of understanding user behavior, and also kind of relating to that, like looking at that information seeking and how they look at navigate for that information. The last part of my, I guess, interesting skill set is I like dabbling in new technologies like blockchain, and I like tinkering with them and seeing what makes them tick. And I think that really helped with my willingness to explore SharePoint and Office 365, the underlying technology of our knowledge base, when we got here. So basically, like I said, in the initial stages of the project, I was mostly doing a lot of learning about the business. So getting up to speed with whatever the work that Lisa and the consultants have done prior. And often I was consulting and meeting with the users of the system and trying to learn and experience their pain points. So I found that job shadowing, so sitting with folks, was often one of the best or really effective ways to do so. So we have a bunch of our operations staff that have to do phone calls, and it was just great to sit through like maybe one 10-minute call or 20-minute call, and you listen to the conversation, you watch where they're struggling with possibly trying to locate the information across either external websites, opening books in front of them, and just kind of feeling that out. It was also during this time that because we had Nicole for the rot work, I was also starting to go to Nicole for questions about trying to understand land title practice. And it was just something just clicked. I don't know. We just got along, or there was something about her explanations about land title practice, and she liked listening to my information governance rants and metadata, that I was like, we actually really need her to join our KM team. Like I want her on the KM team. So guess what? that she's now here, she's not leaving, and she's basically the left to my right brain, while Lisa's our STEM. So I'll leave it to Nicole to tell a little bit more about herself.
Well, thanks, Alicia. As Rick mentioned, I do have 20 years in land administration. I began my career in Calgary in oil and gas, doing surface acquisition for well sites and pipelines. And when I decided to move out to BC, I joined the Land Title Office, where I spent the first 10 years of my career here as an examiner. If you're not familiar with an examiner, basically they are the frontline staff who review all the documents that come into the office to ensure that they're in compliance with statute and regulations and such. This is where I started to notice that there was an issue in which the way knowledge was recorded, stored, conveyed, and especially communicated. So at this point, I had entered the knowledge management world and didn't even know it. So as mentioned, I was brought on because I had that subject matter expertise as part of the ROT committee, which was the redundant, obsolete, and trivial. So basically, I was assigned to review content and make recommendations as to what should be done with that content. Now, after 10 years as an examiner, I moved on to the policy and legal team, where I continued my work with the knowledge management. I was then brought in to help with the information architecture and the launching of our first knowledge base for the land titles group. I also went on to help with the development of a list in SharePoint for our submission requirements, which was essentially a compilation of information from different sources. So as you can see, we are all the definition of accidental KMers. I recently went on to actually get my knowledge management certification from the KM Institute. Thank you, Alicia. And I now lead the KM program here at the LTSA with the launch of 4 knowledge bases and a number of other small initiatives under my belt. So really, anybody can do it, including you. So I'll pass this on to Lisa to talk a little bit about our vision and our strategy.
Thanks, Nicole. So I mentioned the initial project had 2 main deliverables, is to revise that or recreate that knowledge base for land title content, and then it grew in scope to include creating a knowledge management strategy for the entire organization. So we're going to talk about the strategy right now. So our aspiration to be accountable and transparent to the users of British Columbia's land title and survey systems is founded on our commitment to build the knowledge enterprise of the future. The Land Title and Survey Authority will be recognized by our customers and employees for the depth of knowledge we bring while operating the land title and survey systems of British Columbia. So we aligned our vision, that was our vision. We aligned our vision for the knowledge management strategy with the LTSA's overall strategy. And the objectives of the overall strategy include improving operational excellence, growing the business in the public interest, reinvesting and strengthening core systems, and continually investing in people and capabilities. So KM supports the objective of improving operational excellence by improving processes, for example, making content accurate and findable, and this helps staff to do their day-to-day jobs, and in turn improves customer service by providing customers with accurate, up-to-date, and timely information. And KM supports reinvesting in and strengthening core systems in the same way. So the knowledge base as a tool provides a trusted source and place for information for staff to do their day-to-day jobs. And knowledge management supports continually investing in people and capabilities by providing staff with information they need to do their jobs. And we've also provided staff with new tools and ways to, or I guess they're learning new technology by using the tools we build through knowledge management. Alicia, next slide, please. So this is our knowledge management framework that we've developed. There are 6 components to this. So we have that vision that we just talked about, and we have the proposed strategy. And so these 6 dimensions here are how we make it a reality. So this might be a generic framework, but we tailored it to suit the needs of our organization by connecting it with our organizational culture. So the next slide will go over each dimension and give you examples of how knowledge management was implemented for each of the dimensions. Alicia's going to talk about the first dimension, people.
Thank you so much, Lisa. So people, the first dimension of our KM framework is people. And this is a big one. So I will spend a little bit of time going through it because people are the primary asset through which knowledge is developed, managed, recorded, shared, and used. The KM strategy strives to embed an organizational culture which promotes the sharing, learning, use, and development of knowledge assets. In everything the KM team does, people are central. And this can also be seen throughout the other dimensions of the knowledge management framework, which Lisa and Nicole will go over. For the LTSA, customer centricity is apparent in our mission and values. And for the KM team, though we might not be working with external customers such as the public directly, our customers are LTSA staff and often our own colleagues. So whenever we develop or implement new solutions for the knowledge base, we always strive to keep our customers in mind. And the benefit of having internal customers is that we can easily put a face to our user's story whenever we develop solutions. And this really helps us step into that shoe because then we know if we don't make our staff happy, our coworkers aren't afraid of letting us know. So joking aside, when developing or designing new systems, and I think we know this a lot when we hear about implementing record systems or EDRMSs, people or users of the system should always be kept in mind. And this is very true for knowledge management. Knowledge may be the asset of knowledge management to be managed. And there are many ways in which technology can help manage that knowledge. And I think that's where a lot of people get really excited about is always what cool technology can we use to do this? But you always have to remember that people play such a huge role into the success or failure of new systems. And this is why people must be the primary focus of any KM strategy and program, because without support or buy-in from your customers, or in this case, users, knowledge won't be shared or used or developed effectively. Knowledge management is very much can be the business of the management of people relationships. So how does the KM team manage our customers and go about trying to embed this knowledge culture? Our approach is always to try to involve users as much as possible in all the steps of solutioning and development. So what does this look like? So for example, whenever we work with a new department or team in creating a new knowledge base, we always try to find those opportunities where someone from that team can lead aspects of the project. And this way, it also brings the KM team to be more of a consultory or service kind of approach, and getting folks to actually embed the knowledge management themselves into their teams. So some of these projects could look like content inventorying and ROT, so redundant, obsolete, trivial cleanup, as well as coming up with terms for the metadata that we're going to be using to tag the content with. And in some cases, we've had project helpers become the content owners. Lisa will talk a bit more about governance of content that they created or suggested. And this really provides opportunities for staff to learn about managing content. And it also provides us the opportunity to share best practices on how to inventory and manage content. The other words of wisdom is that the users are always, they know a lot about their expertise. And so I think it's great to try to leverage their knowledge and help them design the system that they want to use. So in order to ensure that we are listening to the users and we measure that we're on the right track, we have implemented multiple avenues to collect feedback. And one thing we have learned over the very few years that we've been doing KM is that it's always good to provide options to users. Users can always choose to directly contact us through emails, phone, MS Teams, and Teams is great, by the way, as a collaboration tool for sharing screens and basically teaching or helping users on the fly with the issues that they're encountering or search problems. We also developed a feedback form, and this is part of our processes and using the tool SharePoint, where users can give us a feedback through a SharePoint list, and that list item, the feedback, will automatically forward to the team's inbox. So we have our own little KM fam team inbox that we use. And one of my other personal favorites is we have a series called Connect with the KM team. that we virtually host over MS Teams. They're monthly drop-in sessions, and they're meant to be this informal space where users just pop in, ask us anything. Can you show me how to use X? Or what is this? I'm not sure what something is. Sometimes we use the space to provide updates on what we are working on. And sometimes this is, I think, one of my favorite parts is we learn something from the users. They sometimes will just kind of organically start talking about or sharing tips or tricks of something they've encountered. So it's great to kind of see that engagement. And I recommend that. So speaking about providing updates, communication is such a big key in order to ensuring that we are promoting and embedding that knowledge culture. The KM team does so by posting monthly summaries of what the KM team has been working on our knowledge base homepage. So we highlight what changes are made to the knowledge base and why. And this is really important because it ties that feedback loop we get from our users. And also because in the past, users were not usually made aware of changes to the knowledge base or the content. And this created a distrust of the system that was in place, and often promoted people creating their own little filing systems or information silos. And so this ultimately is, I hope, shows that communication and transparency, if there's a lack of it, it will discourage that sharing, that learning, and that use and development of knowledge. So to encourage this knowledge culture and celebrate some of the ways it manifests organically throughout the organization, and because before and prior, there are ways that we have seen in our organization where knowledge management has happened organically through maybe standard operating procedures or even creations of knowledge bases that were independent of our knowledge base and strategy. We have branded KM swag. And so essentially we were basically approved with this small little budget, and we were able to create magnets that say, I love, in big letters, my hashtag KM fam. And so this is where that KM fam, oh, look, Lisa has the button, love it. KM fam is this naturally organic network of our KMers, so fellow knowledge managementers or people that are often the content managers of their teams throughout the organization. So we like to give this button out to folks who have gone up and beyond, either in practicing knowledge management and in their own teams, or maybe they assist us with solution development. So we try to do our best to acknowledge people's efforts and their contributions to really encourage that knowledge management culture of sharing. So next over, I'm going to go give this to Lisa to expand on governance, which here's your slide.
Thanks, Alicia. Yeah, so this is a nice flow from people to governance, because people are involved in the governance of knowledge management and practices within knowledge management. So I'm going to talk about the overall governance of knowledge management, but it's important to note, and Nicole will touch on this, so I won't steal her thunder, but there's governance within practices in knowledge management, for example, governance of content. But again, here I'm just going to talk about the overall governance of knowledge management. So our framework here is we have a steering committee, a core KM team, and our KM network. So this is what we envision. So the KM steering committee initially was envisioned to be executive level. And it was for a period of time when the knowledge management program was really a project. So we were still in project stages, and it was really a project board. So the steering committee there really made those high level strategic, budget, resource kind of decisions. Since the knowledge management program has become operational, I've really been the steering committee with support from Alicia and Nicole. So all together, we really collaborate, and I'll make recommendations on budget, resources, that type of thing that gets brought to executive for final approval. So it's really a collaborative effort there. The core KM team is the three of us, as we mentioned. So we do the day-to-day functions of knowledge management. It's really Nicole leading this and Alicia implementing a lot of it as well. On the technical side, both of them are really involved. And then we have the KM network. So the KM network are the people that we're engaging with. So as Alicia mentioned, we're building this community or network of people. So it's other staff that get involved in CAM in various ways, whether they're coming to connect with CAM sessions to give their feedback or offer suggestions, or if it's acting on a search committee and improving or to enhance search in the knowledge base. So, and that community or the network is really organic. So we're growing it. I would say every day we're trying to grow that network. I think it's important to note here that knowledge management, it sits within different areas and different organizations. So sometimes it's within the operations area, sometimes it's in sort of governance policy area, and a lot of times it's in IT. So for us, it's in the policy and legal area. And why this is important is because there is a lot of technology involved in this. And so we don't have anyone that's from our IT department on the team. We do a lot of that work ourselves. And Nicole and Alicia have learned a lot from contractors that we work with. We have a small budget every year so far. It seems to be going down, and that may be because Nicole and Alicia are just getting so good at implementing technical changes and builds themselves. So we have a SharePoint developer that we work with that's helping us do the more complex technical builds in SharePoint. And so that's how overall knowledge management governance works. And I'll now pass it over to Nicole to tell you more about process. And I think she's going to touch on sort of how content is managed and the governance around that.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Lisa. So processes, why are they important? So they provide us clear direction on what we're doing. And what's really important for our organization is they provide consistency in how we operate. So for those of you who don't know, we actually have 4 offices. Now, in 3 of those offices, we have people doing the same jobs. So you can understand how consistency is important for the way in which we do jobs, but also that customer centricity for our external customers. So what became really apparent at the beginning, I think of probably Lisa's work, was that there was a real issue with the quality of our content. As she mentioned, it was kind of thrown into this knowledge base in 2010, and then in 2016, it was acknowledged that, hey, you know, this content's getting out of date. We're not doing anything to maintain it. So therefore, we had to implement something to aid in that. So what we did was implement a key process, and that key process was the content management lifecycle. So what that does is it has 5 stages for the life cycle of content. It allows us to plan content, develop it, publish it. There's a stage for MEM, which is considered monitor, evaluate, and maintain. And finally, archiving. So why is this important? This allowed us to manage our content in a more efficient way. It also, in conjunction with our content ownership model, provided accountability. So people knew who to go to ensure that this content remained up to date. Now, as always, we want to lead by example. So the knowledge management team has a number of processes in place for our own team that allow us to work together in a consistent and I think a fantastic way. So some of those processes that we've implemented just on our team are things like how our scrums or our weekly meetings operate. We have task lists and change request lists that we go through each week and we update. We have processes around how we obtain feedback. We track our feedback so that we can go back and look at that. We have processes around archiving, tagging of content, even publishing and onboarding content ownership owners. So as you can see, it's never ending. We've even come to have processes around how we create and develop our knowledge bases. So as you can see, processes are really important and they aid us in managing our content and hopefully making it better for that end user. Next slide, please, Alicia. So we talk a lot about content, and the reason we do this is, well, content first. Now, this is a phrase I think the three of us will probably never forget. Daniel, our beloved contractor that we dealt with for probably 2 or 3 years, drilled this into our head that, without understanding what the content is, it's really hard to know what to do with it. So the first thing when we venture out to do a knowledge base in particular is we need to identify that content and become familiar with it and understand it. So what we do is we do an inventory. So this is an inventory of all existing content. And we have also identified new content during this period of time. An example of that might be, this is a mission requirements list that we created. So what that was doing was transforming content from different areas and compiling it into one place. So we work with the actual departments to identify this existing content. And we obviously have some guidelines around what we would want to include in the knowledge base and what we don't. Now, one of the guiding principles that we have always maintained is that knowledge should be made available to everyone. There should be no walled gardens. So that's what we use to guide what content we add to our knowledge bases. So you might look at things like vacation schedules or statistics. We don't want to share that with everyone in the organization. So therefore, that's not something that we're going to be looking to add to our knowledge bases. So once we've identified the content by doing that inventory, we need to become more familiar with it. So the first thing that we do is we start to categorize that content. And how we do that is first off by content types. So as you can see, we have a number of content types listed here. We have news, we have manuals, we have videos, we have all sorts of things. So once we've done that, we, as Alicia, I think, has mentioned a couple times, we want to make sure that we have the highest quality of content going in. So we do often, if necessary, perform a process called the ROT, which is redundant, obsolete, trivial. So again, we're identifying content that probably doesn't need to be in the knowledge base. It's either outdated, no longer relevant, or maybe it's just common knowledge now. Now, the other thing that we want to do with content is we want to make it accessible. We can do this in a number of ways. Primarily, we do this by tagging content. So we do this by tagging it with a content type. We also do it by assigning metadata. This allows us to make it more searchable for our users and ultimately more accessible. So Alicia, do you want to speak a little bit to our technology and exactly how we do that?
Absolutely. Can't wait for you to turn that one over. So technology is the vehicle used to store and make knowledge accessible and basically to allow people to work together. Our KM strategy defines a successful KM technology ecosystem, which basically is to allow people to hold conversations and share knowledge, as well as to search, retrieve any documented knowledge and to synthesize knowledge from many sources or to capture and structure new knowledge in a variety of contexts. For LTSA, I think I was mentioning to Rick before we started, technology has always been instrumental in how we assist or enable our staff to work effectively, especially technologies that assist with the communications and collaboration. And this is because our organization has always required technology to enable communication and collaboration across geographically separate offices across a province. So, technology is this really interesting dimension of the framework because you've seen kind of these examples where we've sort of referred to certain tools or processes. It assists or it manifests itself in other dimensions of the framework, such as building the technical solutions to enable those processes, or even about thinking about your people when you're designing technological tools and how you get them adopted. I also think this is where the part where you might have expected us to start advocating about how you should go about the careful selection of technology, research what tools are out there, weigh the pros and cons, get input from your users. And I think I could speak for the team that we recommend an approach like that, if ideally that's what we could have done. However, not all things are in our team's control. Our technological ecosystem was predetermined for us and we had to make the best of it and work with it, not against it. So for the LTSA, and I think for many organizations out there, IT is always responsible for that life cycle management of systems and to make the decisions to acquire technologies and to update it. The first knowledge base we were tasked with was redeveloping on a SharePoint 2010. And in the span of 3 years, we then migrated from 2010 to 2016 to 2016 to Office 365 and SharePoint Online. This was not challenging only for the KM team, as we've mentioned that we don't have that in like a technical person on this team. We're learning how to use SharePoint ourselves, and we have consultants. But I just want to acknowledge that this was also a difficult time for our users of the system, as they were getting change so much in that rapid period. So our current KM technology is presently based in Office 365 and the suite of tools, so SharePoint Online, MS Teams, Stream, which is a video recording and hosting software. This ecosystem, like in many organizations, probably now due so to the pandemic, enables that collaboration and that ability to work, share knowledge, and develop knowledge virtually. And compared to where we started 3 years ago, I think it's shaping into the successful KM technology ecosystem that we envisioned. So what are some of the ways that we've explicitly leveraged SharePoint and Office 365 to implement this? One being is the workflows, using the technology that SharePoint enables to automate certain processes, such as publishing content and communicating changes. We do so through 2 lists. We have a content update feed, and we have a policy, like an issue tracker that tracks policy practice changes. And this was developed in response because users used to not know what the processes were behind in the changes, or seeing how long it takes in a pipeline to incorporate a change from policy and practice into the content that they need to refer to. It used to be different for each offices. They might verbally communicate how a practice change during a stand-up. It might be put into an email. And again, because the process is so long until this content was incorporated, folks would rely on that email or what they heard verbally. And there needed to be a better solution so that people could get the content all at once in the same offices. And so this is where we came up with the content update feed and policy and issue tracker. So these are SharePoint lists. And what it does is we have the content owners. When they updated content, they can fill in the content update feed with the change, note it whether it's a minor or major. And in the header of the email notification that staff will receive, it'll let them know ahead of time if it's minor or major. Minor, they can probably choose to ignore it because it's probably just a spelling error or some quick fix link. And then it comes into their email inbox. They also know that the content update feeds on our knowledge base homepage, so they can always refer to it. We do automate the deletion of those content update feeds and give about a time period of about 3 months. So this gives time for the practice policy change to be incorporated into the content. And the issue tracker basically is showing this process of the policy or practice change. So what stage it's at, who's responsible, and who will be incorporated to and by whom. So we also, like Nicole has mentioned, we've utilized SharePoint content types and the term store in order to build and utilize metadata so we can organize and filter content. And some ways that we've done this is it aids in the search and retrieval of content, so we can have custom search refiners, which our SharePoint developer had to help us develop that because SharePoint out of the box does not have a lot of features or functionalities that is useful. The other way of how this has really worked is topic pages. So we heard from a lot of our staff that they were having issues locating all content related to a certain topic that they needed to do their job. This is mostly with folks on the phones. They really want to locate external and internal sources all over on just one page. So the topic pages, again, another custom solution that our lovely developer came up with is we can use it to pre-filter content. So we have to make sure that all content gets tagged to a topic. And so this topic page pre-filters all content with this topic so that this way we don't have to make 40 different pages. We only have one page that revolves around a filter, basically. The other aspect of SharePoint that we've used to operationalize governance and enforce accountability and transparency of the content ownership model is people data. So using the people data, I think it's connected to the Active Directory data for like emails. So we can actually assign people to content. And so our users can actually see a face to who owns what content. And this really is used to implement that content ownership model. So very super important for identifying that responsibility and that accountability of content. And that way users can also know who they need to contact if they have questions about the content. And lastly, the submission requirements. So this is one of those great examples Nicole's been talking about or alluding to, is how we've used SharePoint technology to synthesize knowledge from many sources to create a new knowledge asset. So the submission requirements basically contains some quick information that it used to be really hard for staff to locate because they'd have to go to the external website, they'd have to open manuals, and it's basically a SharePoint list open as a table and also is tagged according to a topic. So according to each topic, it filters things like the fees, the natures of interests, and other useful like the forms that is needed for an application. And so with that, I will turn it over to Nicole to speak about our metrics and how we monitor.
Great. So last but certainly not least, our metrics. So we do use metrics to measure performance of all aspects of KM system. We are a business and we do need to justify ourselves to our management team. But we also use these metrics to inform decisions on things such as the MEM cycle, which is the monitor, evaluate, and maintain. We use it to inform some of our SharePoint tools, such as the pin to top function. So this allows us to highlight 3 pieces of content. So maybe depending on the time of the year, maybe it's property tax season, and we want to highlight that content relating to that. We also use metrics to help inform our operations departments. An example of this is they perform refresher training each year. We've provided our analytics to them to identify the content that people are accessing the most in an effort to maybe identify potential training areas. So there are a few different types of metrics that we collect. We have usage, which includes the number of people that are accessing the knowledge base, but also the number of times content is accessed. Another type of metrics that we collect is feedback from people. So how do we do that? I think Alicia's covered a number of these, but we do annual surveys. After we launch a knowledge base, we will typically do a pilot survey to collect feedback. We have our Connect with KM sessions, which is very informal, and we have feedback forms, and we're always open to a phone call or a Teams message or an email. So as you can see, metrics really do support what we do. Next slide, Alicia. And now what's next for us? Well, I think it's important to acknowledge one thing. So we're currently about 5 years into our knowledge management program. And it takes somewhere between 5 to 7 years to actually get one off the ground and going. So be patient. It will happen if you are going down this road. But some of the things that we're looking for going forward, continue onboarding people for new knowledge bases. So we have a number of knowledge bases, but we have more departments who are in need of that help. So we will be taking a look at that. We'll continue to support the existing knowledge bases. So if you remember, we had long ago created a knowledge base, but we didn't take care of it. So it's really important that we continue to maintain supporting those existing ones by enhancing it. Maybe it's the integration of new content. Maybe it's presenting it in a different way. We're also looking at expanding outside of knowledge bases to other areas of KM. So things like this might include, we're considering a subject matter expertise list for the organization so that you can easily identify someone as a subject matter expert and you could go to them for help. Other things we're looking at are a potential issue and solution tracker, so that if someone in our vault had a difficult time finding a record, they can now explain that and track it for future reference. The last but not the least, we are considering one knowledge base. So right now our knowledge base is primarily internal facing, but we're considering making that external facing, because it's really important in the work that we do that internal customers and external customers are sharing that same knowledge. They're talking on the same language. So having said all of that, the sky is the limit. And that concludes our presentation for today. And I would like to open it up for any questions.
All right, maybe Rick will come on here and we can go through some of the QA that was posted.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let Rick lead this.
So a couple of things that came out of the presentation. I just want to thank the three of you for a wonderful presentation. I really thoroughly enjoyed it myself. We haven't got much time here. We've got just a few minutes before the top of the hour. But technology question: Are you guys in SharePoint on local servers or out in the Microsoft Cloud? Is it on-prem? You're in online. You're in
We're SharePoint online.
So it is definitely in the cloud. How do you deal with content owners leaving? Does it automatically get transferred or does it become an orphan?
Nicole, I think Nicole's good for a question.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of this happen recently, and the way that we're dealing with it is whoever's taking that role over essentially becomes that content owner. Either that or the content lead can identify someone else that they may wish to have that role. So those are the two ways that we've been dealing with it.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. So when we contemplated this, we try to do it based on role instead of individual. So the person going into that, and if the role goes away, which is rare, we have the content leads who are really responsible for delegating who that goes to.
There was another question too, Alicia, on space for users to pop in for questions.
Yeah.
And the question was kind of, is this in real life space or virtual space, or where is it actually happen?
Oh, sorry, it's on MS Teams. So we just have it as like a monthly session that we have sent out like an invite to all the staff, and it just says like a note like you can feel free to drop in and ask questions.
I think that whole idea of being able to have people drop in and ask the questions is really, really critical to this whole thing. Another one of the questions came in. Do you think the future of the industry, with so much data not being bound to a document, is this shift from records management professionals to more like knowledge management experts and value of data experts in the organization? Should those early in their career have this in mind?
Do you mind if I take a stab at it, you guys?
Please do. I was going to say
no worries.
Yeah.
All right. I'm someone who recently graduated from the MLIS and MAS program, and I can definitely say that this is really in the forefront of, I think, a lot of the students' mind is we're thinking about this data, the digital information tsunami. And I think definitely knowledge management is a great shift and might be a way to also, how do you say it? Make records management more sexy, if you want. It could be like that information governance or knowledge management approach to try to basically enforce some sort of or compliant program, but make it more fun too. Hope that helps.
I just wanted to add that having been a kind of a back in the pioneer days in the early 90s of putting document management systems in place and maintaining them since then, it was always in everybody's mind that they needed to do kind of knowledge management, but it was so onerous because of the platforms and tools that we had available to us. It's only now in the kind of latter years that we have those kind of teams and other collaboration tools that are required to let that kind of thing happen, let it actually function. I'm just thrilled to hear you have that you have an actual functioning knowledge management system that you've spent the time to deal with. I don't know many people that have. Just want to say, like, I do know a lot of people, and this is one of those really, really hard things that people want to accomplish but never really get a chance to do. So my question to you, and I know it's right on the hour now, but we are going to publish the recording of this presentation. It's going to go on. We've been putting it on the Western IM website, and everybody, all the attendees will get a link to that. And if we can get your slide deck, would that be possible for us to publish as well? And the other question, follow-on question just at the end is there any useful material that's not proprietary in nature that you think as a group might be good to publish on that, along with the slide deck and the presentation? So in other words, a form that you've created that worked for you, or, I mean, just, I'm not asking you to come up with anything right now, but maybe talk amongst yourselves and see if there's any non-proprietary things that would be useful for other people that have been through the presentation.
I'm sure we can think about it and provide something.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Just thinking about it's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So,
I just wanted to add, there is a chat going on about wiki in the chat. So I just wanted to quickly address that, because
sure.
when we first started the project, this was contemplated by the leadership that we could implement sort of a wiki-based approach to knowledge management. That was quickly shot down because we work in a regulatory environment. The thought was that this collaborative wiki approach may be offside. There may be people relying on information from in the wiki, like as people add to it, that may not be accurate. So it would have to be highly managed in terms of who approves the content and everything else. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Thanks. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to just say thank you again to the three of you for such a wonderful presentation. Thanks to the Western Canadian ARMA chapters for allowing all these presentations to go on for RIM month, and not as a sales kind of thing, but as a learning experience. Western IM has been doing Learn With Us. A lot of the people on the session today came from our kind of Learn With Us group that have been following learning opportunities. And there is a place to sign up for the Learn With Us group if anybody is interested in continuing on after RIM month for those sessions. So thanks again, and everybody have a wonderful week, rest of your week. And we'll look forward to hearing from all of you. If anything is, if you want to talk to anyone about anything, just follow up. Thanks again, and have a great week and weekend when it gets here.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank
Thanks
you
so
much,
much for being a wonderful host.
Rick. Yeah.
Bye now.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.